Hey, what's up? This is Riyadh from Ox Coding, and in this video we are gonna be creating an Android Studio project. But before we start, let's get a quick overview of MVVM architectural pattern. So you probably heard about MVVM. It's one of the best options for Android apps development, and Google also recommends that we use this architectural pattern. In MVVM we have model, view and view model. Let's start with the view. So view handles what the user sees and touches on the screen. In other words, you can say the view is basically an activity or a fragment. But in a view, we don't put any business logic like requesting data from the network or from the local database. The view can only display stuff on the screen which it gets from the view model. Now let's talk about view model. View model provides data for the view by getting it from the repository. Now let's take a look at this diagram. You might say, how does the view get all the data which it should display? The arrow is only pointing towards the view model. This means the view model doesn't know which views are using it. So what view model does is make the appropriate data in view model observable. Here comes live data. We can observe live data when any changes happen to it. So we have a live data inside of this view model, and the view just observes that live data. So when the data changes, the view which is observing this live data will be notified about the change. The state of the data is kept in the view model. View model is independent of configuration changes. So even if the user rotates the screen, the data won't be fetched again because the view will receive the same instance of the view model. This makes life way easier. Then we have the model. But there is another step between view model and the model in a form of a repository. The repository fetches data from the local database or from the network. The repository is a mediator between local storage and the server. This is where we check whether the remote data should be cached locally and what to do with the data. So when the view model wants some data, it gets it from the repository. Then it's up to the repository to decide what data it should make available to the view model. Now let's talk about the connectedness and the flow of data. The view observes data in the view model, and the view model observes data in the repository, which also observes data from the local database and from the remote data source. Through this diagram, we can see that the upper class has a direct reference to its child. So the view has a direct reference to view model, the view model has a direct reference to the repository, and the repository has a direct reference to local storage or the web service. On the other hand, the child doesn't have a direct reference to its parent. Children only expose some data by allowing it to be observed through live data. Here we can see the solid lines represent a direct reference and the dashed line represent observables or live data. Alright, that's all about MVVM. You'll have a better understanding when you do some actual coding. So now let's create a new project on Android Studio. New Android Studio project. Here we select empty activity. Name, movie, MVVM. Here is my own package name. And we select Android X. Android X is the improved version of all the Android support libraries. Minimum API level is 5. And the language is Kotlin. Now let's hit finish. Now let's add some libraries in build.gradle. We need to add this lifecycle extension for view model and live data. Next up is recycler view and card view, and retrofit to make network calls. Here we added adapter RxJava because we'll use RxJava adapter to make network calls. Then we have JSON for converting JSON that we'll get from the API call. Then glide for showing images, paging for pagination, and lastly RxJava and RxAndroid. Sync now. And that's all for this video. The project link is in the video description. See you guys in the next one.